Welcome to the Wedding Songs Podcast, featuring newly released songs you need to know and the tried and true classics. Get song ideas from the time guests arrive until the last dance of the reception. And now your host, Matt Campbell, founder of MyWeddingSongs.com.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wedding Songs Podcast. I am Matt Campbell. Today, I'm talking with Shellie Reid Warner from Relevant Event Planning, and she is located in Eastern PA, so, Philadelphia area. And we're going to be talking about what not to do at weddings. So welcome to the show, Shellie.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show to help us with this topic. And I'm going to start off the way we start off every podcast. Can you just give us a heartwarming or memorable wedding moment?
Oh, gosh, there's a lot of them. I kind of specialize in those heartwarming moments. Those are really super important to me. I would say that probably during COVID, right in the beginning of it, I had a close personal friend whose daughter was getting married, and she planned the big ballroom wedding, and it had to shut down. And this was when there was like 10 people allowed to be together at a wedding. And the bride, Ray, was super upset about everything. She was moving to Minneapolis, wasn't sure she would ever get the chance to see all these friends, to say goodbye. It was just like the worst situation altogether because they were moving, getting married, and everything was falling apart. And it was really important to them that they be able to get married on the day they had selected. So I said to her mom, I said, go take her to this park because we have a really beautiful park with like these old lime kiln ruins. Go take her for a walk in this park. Tell her I can put a wedding together that's outdoors with 10 people and it will be absolutely ethereal. And so we went down. She loved it, absolutely loved it. Didn't know what song she wanted to walk down the aisle to. I said, Ray, it would mean everything to me if you walk down the song I walked down, which was Codaline, the one. And she's like, I love it. Let's do it. We took all the ruins around this space, added 100 candles, battery operated candles, every candle I could get my hands on. I hired some guy with a guitar to play the song. We set it all up with 10 chairs, and then we did circles in the grass with rose petals, one for them and one for each of their families, because they weren't allowed to be close to each other. So it was like this symbolic thing of circles. And then we stepped away so they could be together and stay under 10 people, because we would have been 12, me and my cohort. We went and set up the cake and champagne, and they were supposed to be married as a self-marrying Quaker, what they called a Quaker wedding. Dad was going to do it. So he did it. It's supposed to be 15 minutes because we did this at dusk. Then mom wanted to say something. Then grandpa wanted to say something. Before you knew it, every single person out of that crowd of 10 had something to say. There was not a dry eye in the place. I think everybody needed it. They needed to say all these things to them. The one brother grabbed the guitar from the guitar player and started playing a song he'd been writing for them. And it was like this organic moment that just appeared with no planning, beyond what we were doing. Everybody just said everything they wanted to say to these two from the heart. And it was by far and above the best ceremony I have ever seen or ever been a part of. It was absolutely awesome.
I love that everybody got to speak, because you can't have that at a 200-person wedding, because it would go on forever and everybody complains about the toast going on too long anyway.
Well, to add to that story, 2 weeks ago, Ray and her husband Reed flew home almost 4 years later. They flew home and they finally had the big wedding, and they turned the script around. They had no one. They got dressed up in their clothes, their dress and everything, had flowers, had like the reception all ready to go. And instead of having anybody up there, they repeated their vows to each other and then turned the script on everybody who came and said, today is about you. It's about all of you, who we miss, who we've celebrated with, who we've enjoyed meeting, enjoyed getting to know, all those things. And they sat there and said, in the 4 years since we got officially married, 23 of you have had babies, 28 of you have gotten your PhD, 16 of you have gotten your doctorates. It was just so cool how they flipped the script about everybody that was there. It was really, really special.
That's awesome. And that could happen at any small wedding right now. I love that idea. Before we go any further, can you please just introduce yourself to our listeners?
Like you said before, my name's Shellie Reid Warner from Relevant Event Planning. I'm over here in Kutztown, PA, which is on the northeast border of Pennsylvania. I've been in business for about 10 years, starting in corporate, sporting, all kinds of dramatic events, from shows to competitive events. And then got into weddings, tried not to. I was like, there's just too much pretty. I don't want to be involved in that. There's too much. It's like going into a candy store and asking me to pick which chocolate I want. But I did. I got into it. And now I'm a little bit obsessed, to be honest with you, which you can imagine. But, I really position myself in this world of the wedding industry as being somebody who loves heartfelt moments. I love appealing to all the senses. I want you to remember the words. I want you to remember the music. I want you to remember what the candle was that we put in the bathrooms or in the hallway. So I just want everybody to have those moments that they might be able to remember later on about that particular couple or that particular day. So that's kind of where we come from the heart.
So let me ask you, we're at the end of July. Are you seeing any wedding trends that are in your area?
I bristle at the word trend, to be honest with you. I'm finding that some of the quote unquote trends are showing up on Instagram and TikTok and that kind of stuff. And I feel like too many things are being geared to try to become viral. And I don't care for that. So I kind of stay away from that kind of a trend. Like I'm not a big fan of grown men having fanny packs full of flower petals and throwing them down the aisle. It's just silly. Some of the things that I know everybody loves them. I'm not a fan, but everybody loves them, are those foam sticks, the saber sticks that light up that everybody's taking on the dance floor. I don't like them, but everybody has a good time. It does insert a certain amount of energy onto the dance floor. Not a fan, but I can't argue with fun. We're starting to see people walking away from champagne towers and going more for like margarita towers, espresso martini towers. Those are a lot of fun. And again, inject a little bit more energy into the end of the night. Having an espresso martini just kind of lets people get back on the dance floor for just a little bit longer. So yeah, those are two of them. But like I said, I try to stay more, I want a wedding to be in and of itself a wedding, not a birthday party, not a quinceañera. I want it to be a wedding. And so I like to preserve those traditions in as much as possible. I mean, yeah, we're getting away from cake cuttings and garter tosses, thank goodness, and that kind of stuff. But I still think there's some really classy traditions or meaningful moments that could happen at a wedding that I think are really important.
Well, and I think the uniqueness of your wedding, if you're doing everything that everybody else is doing, you as a wedding planner, that kind of, I would think would be a negative thing because couples want the uniqueness.
Absolutely. I had a couple years ago who came to me and they were huge Wes Anderson fans. And at the time I was like, what are you a fan of? And then I watched a movie, then I watched two movies, then I Googled it, then I'm reading about him and I'm looking at all the things. And it evolved into design decisions that we could make that reflected Wes Anderson. So it was the color palette, and we were doing, instead of a cocktail hour, they wanted like a coffee hour because they had some alcoholics in their family. So they wanted to keep the focus off alcohol. So we were going to have they went garage sailing and they got all these old crappy mugs. And so we were doing a big mug wall. And so everybody was having coffee before the dinner. So that kind of stuff, to me, that's personal. That's not trendy. That's fun. And that is a true reflection of who they are, not just some silly thing they saw on TikTok or Instagram.
I love it. We're making a connection here because I totally agree. When you're incorporating your personality, it just makes it extra special. I consider one of the most important aspects of a wedding is the timing of events. What do you consider to be the most important?
Well, I definitely, being the wedding planner, I definitely think timing is super, super important. We create incredibly 10-page timelines that only we use. And then we give all of our vendors, their own timeline, which isn't as long, but we have about a 10-page timeline. So we know it's super important to be tight on that timeline and make sure we've accounted for every minute and every activity that needs to happen, whether it be time that we need for bustling a dress or walking from point A to point B. We account for all of that so that if anything happens, we can look further down the timeline and grab some time from that and pivot, and then let our vendors know, okay, we're good. We got a couple extra minutes here. We can make it happen. So I do feel that that's super, super important. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the reason we're all here is because of a promise. And those vows are incredibly important. So I've fortunately been lucky enough to work with a lot of clients who also believe that, to the point where some of them don't even want to say them in front of people. They want to go off into some trees by themselves, do a first look, and then exchange their vows between them privately, maybe on video, maybe not. Maybe the photographer is standing there back away from them, but they were wanting to do it privately. And to me, those are the couples that get it. Those are the couples that I can say they're going to last. They're going to have a great relationship and a great life together. So I kind of think like, yes, timing from a planner standpoint is super important, but I really think the vows are the reason why every single person is there.
And there's no retakes. What are some common wedding planning mistakes that couples make that you see all the time or anytime?
Yeah, I got a couple. There's some that just hurt my heart, but I have found that the biggest mistake they make is getting ahead of what they should be doing first. They go and buy a dress before they get a venue. They go and start looking at venues before they've talked to their parents and told their parents, this is what we want. And then talking to their parents and saying, how are you going to planning on participating with us, mom and dad? And that's the opening line for parents to say, well, this is what we'd like you to do, or this is what we'd like to share with you or give you in terms of financial backing or no financial backing. That's when you have to have that open conversation to start it off. Because if you go further and start buying things and putting deposits on things before you've had that conversation, you're going to get yourself in debt really quick. And you're going to start to hurt people's feelings or be very hurt yourself because your expectations are different than someone else's. So, I mean, I even have it on my Instagram page. Like I have it pinned to the top, like things to do before you even talk to anybody, is like just for couples to sit down together by themselves and say, what do we want this day to look like? Do we want 300 people or do we want 50? Do we want spring? Do we want fall? Like find out what you two want and what's important to you, and then go talk to your family. Find out what's important to them, because as much as it is all about the couple, it's also about family. Your family's going to be there. Your family's going to support you. So they should have some input, maybe not one that you're going to follow, but you should listen at least to see what's important, especially if they're backing you financially. But it's a good time to, I think, really open the communication so everybody's expectations are understood and feelings aren't going to be hurt. And you just go into it with your eyes wide open before you plow forward and start booking people and booking venues that you cannot afford, or venues that are not going to be suitable for the time of year because somebody's that they don't like to be up there up in the north in the cold or whatever. You just need to have those conversations with people so that everybody goes in with their eyes wide open. So yeah, I think that's one thing I've seen people do that's kind of a bad start. But then I've seen some people do some stuff that's not really necessarily in the planning process, but it's just like bad mistakes. One being seating charts, escort cards, and any kind of display to show people where they're going to sit. I cannot tell you, I've had doctors, educators, some of the most bright people in the world hand me all their escort cards and they're not in alphabetical order. Or they'll give me, here's my seating chart and it's by table. I'm like, you can't do that. Like people don't know what table they're sitting at. They can't find themselves. So they have to stand there and look at a chart for 20 minutes to try to find their name and then go find their table. It's like, you have to give us a list with everybody in alphabetical order. That's the way the world works. You need to find your name. It's like the old fashioned phone books. It's alphabetical order. One of my sweet friends, she just gave me a list. She had all of them by table. I said, give them to me in alphabetical order. So she put them at their tables first. She gave me a clump of table 1, a clump from table 2, a clump from table 3, and they were in alphabetical order at the table. I'm like, no, that's not right. So it's like so many people misinterpret that. No matter how many times you try to make it clear, so many people do that. And then my favorite is when they do that and they give it to you the night before the wedding. So now I have to go put them in alphabetical order, and it's an outdoor wedding and they put it on really thin paper. Well, when you're outside with little pieces of paper, the least little gust of wind is going to send those bad boys right out of alphabetical order like that. So I've started to get, supplies, so to speak, to circumvent that. Like I have a card rack that we put all the cards in. So if they're outdoors, they're weighted down. I recommend, let's use something heavier, like a tile or even a cute, pretty stones and put people's names on it with their table numbers underneath. Like, let's just be different and try to stay away from those little pieces of paper when we're outside. But, and the other thing I find is people try to, again, back to that Instagram thing, they get all these cool things to do and they try to cram so many activities into one night that they are almost exhausted changing outfits, getting dances with grandpa and grandma. You know, we want to cut a groom's cake. Oh, we want to change our shoes, like all the things. And it's impossible. And especially if you want them photographed, you know, because that's an extra time that it takes to get that photo and everything like that. And they want to go get sunset pictures. It's like you've got 3 hours pretty much from the time you're done eating to the time the event is over to do all that stuff. And it's going to leave you with no time to really dance and just relax.
I say that all the time. The average wedding, you'd have 2 hours of dancing. And if you're adding all of that other stuff, yeah, it's just cutting,
Yeah.
like you said, cutting into that fun time.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things I want to just touch base on that you said before is I think really important arguments between couples is about money. So having that conversation, I think first, well, like we were saying, do you want 100 people? Do you want 50 people? Do you want 300 people? Well, if you're going to have 300 people, do you want to have a 300 person wedding or a down payment on a house?
Yeah.
You know, you have to have those discussions beforehand. And like you were saying too, having the discussions with the parents because maybe grandmother's expecting the wedding to be in a church. So it's just having those conversations and being mindful of family's feelings there and also creating something that you want as a couple as well.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate / fortunate in this day and age, most couples plan their own wedding. I don't have too many moms involved anymore. I mean, if they do, they're kind of coming along to support, not necessarily guide. And a lot of parents come in and all they remember is what kind of wedding they had 30 years ago. And it is completely different financially, completely different style wise. People are getting married in barns now, not church basement. They're getting married at museums and not ballrooms at hotels. So people are just doing things a little differently. And moms are like, what? How are you going to do that? You know? And I think that's when a planner is super helpful because I know sometimes I say I'm part planner, part therapist, but I've learned to navigate moms and work with moms and help give moms something to do. So mom doesn't feel like she has no say or no purpose. You know, everybody wants a purpose. Even dads want a purpose. I've posted on that before about like dad jobs. The things, go tell dad to bring lunch for everybody. Tell dad to bring breakfast for everybody. Tell dad to pick out the song for that you want to dance. Have dad pick out the song and send it over to the DJ. Don't even tell the bride what you want to dance to. Make it a surprise. I mean, those are the things that are like so important, is to include people and make it feel like it's a shared celebration.
I love it. Preventing bad feelings and making sure everybody's included. I love it. In your experience, what are some unrealistic expectations that couples think about with their wedding planning?
How much things are going to cost. One, that they are going to make everybody happy. They're not. But again, that leads back to communication. I know there's a statistic out there. I don't even repeat it anymore because it's so antiquated. But I think there was one that was like 70% of all brides go 40%, or couples, I should say, go over 40% of their budget, which that's a lot. That is a really lot. And hopefully, you know, as time has gone on, and this is the plus of having TikTok and Instagram, people are getting a little bit more educated about ways to save money, what you should expect, why florists cost so much money, why wedding planners cost money. You know, like those things should be educating them a little bit. So I think that hopefully over time, people go into it with their eyes wide open. I always say to my couples that the DJ, the photographer, and the videographer, or your ceremony musician or your band, none of them care whether there's 12 people there or 500 people there. Their costs are the same unless you add an hour or two. Their costs are pretty much there. But all the other things are affected by how many people you invite. And so for every person you add, if you wanted to do the math, that number, it's scary.
Have you ever seen a ceremony or reception go wrong? Now, of course, you don't have to mention any couples or names, but is there any specific moments or elements that you could say have gone wrong just to kind of educate those that are planning? Time for a quick break from the show to let you know about the Wedding Music Letter. Are you struggling to find the wedding songs that match your personality and music style? Are you having a hard time keeping up with the new wedding songs being released? Then subscribe today to the Wedding Music Letter by going to my website, myweddingsongs.com, and clicking on the Join Now button. Every Wednesday, you'll get song ideas to build your wedding playlists. On the last day of the month, you'll get all of the new wedding songs released from the prior month. So subscribe today and join over 7,000 other engaged couples and wedding pros by going to myweddingsongs.com and joining the Wedding Music Letter today. Now back to the show.
It hurts me to even repeat these stories because I cannot believe it happened. But I had a couple years ago who were a bit of a difficult groom. They were lovely, but he was very adamant about certain things. And one of them was his DJ was a friend. I said, is he a professional DJ? He does it at parties. Is he a licensed and professional DJ? No, he's not. I'm like, you might want to rethink that. There's a lot of electric, a lot of computer problems, a lot of stuff that can go wrong. And you want to make sure this person is insured and prepared and educated. Sure enough, bridesmaids walk down the aisle. It was an outdoor wedding. Bridesmaids walk down the aisle, one after the other. Everything's beautiful. Bride and father are ready to walk down the grass. Music stops. So the bride had to walk down her wedding. You get one shot to do this, to no music. He was livid with his friend. And his friend is up front. He's right to the left of the altar. Everybody could see him fumbling, trying to plug things in, plug things out. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. And I was like, now I actually have it in my contract that I will only work with licensed professionals. Period. No questions asked. And if anybody asks me to do it otherwise, then I have to charge them more because now I have to educate those people more and spend more time with them and make sure that they are prepared with all the things that could save them if anything goes wrong. And, it's the reason why everybody's that are in this industry are professionals, and using somebody that's not is just a big mistake. It's not where you want to save money, not where you want to save money at all. That was one situation. I had one that was really bad. This had to do with a vegan bakery. Now, I'm not a vegan, so I can't speak for it, but somebody once told me that there are certain preservatives they do not use in vegan baking. Cake shows up, it's absolutely beautiful till we cut it, and inside the cake was mold. We had to pivot really quickly, slice that entire layer off, and dig into the cake until we found a part that was not moldy, and slice very tiny pieces of cake to put out for guests. And we decided not to put them at the table because now they're having fun, they're dancing. So nobody realized cake had not been served at the table. We just set them out to people that were already seated, or that we put it at a table so they could get it because we didn't have enough for everybody. So that was bad. And then we, before I even left that reception, I called the bakery and said, you need to refund their entire amount of their cake and put it up back on their charge card. I'm not going to leave you a bad review or anything, but you need to know that when you make a cake, because sometimes they make them a couple days in advance and refrigerate it before they put that final coat of icing on it, you need to check your cakes and make sure that they've not started getting mold on them, because it was instantaneous. Like 2 days in, it started getting moldy. So that was a bad one. I also, one time I had a bride who she was stressed. She had a 9-year-old daughter with her, and she had a contentious guest that she got involved with. Even though we were handling him, he had lost some sunglasses, started, claiming someone stole them. We're looking everywhere around for these sunglasses, and she got involved in it. And she had been drinking too much. And it wound her up. She was extremely tired, got her wound up, and she literally had a meltdown. And it was towards the end of the night when she had her final meltdown, but it ended up her screaming at her 9-year-old daughter, and then proceeded to go under a tree, folding her arms and pouting. The bride, not the daughter. They wouldn't get on the bus. So now I'm like, okay, we never let the bride drink that much to get to that point. Like, we have to monitor them so that they leave having a good time, knowing that they did not ruin their own wedding by getting too drunk, because it was ugly, really ugly.
And I think that you would agree too that a lot of couples forget to eat or don't eat. And I would be making sure that that's mandatory at the reception, and hopefully during the day as well.
I called my mama bear. I said, when you guys walk down the aisle, before you even get your family pictures taken at the altar, you will come into a quiet room and gather and take a deep breath, and your appetizers will be sitting there. and a drink of your choice. Like, we arrange that in advance. We know what their drink of choice will be. We get them something to eat so they get to try all their appetizers. We give them 10 minutes and then come back out and do those pictures. And then we watch them while they're at their sweetheart table or their head table to make sure. And then we go over and ask them, how's your dinner? Do you have any messages for the chef? Like, we kind of go in so we can sort of see, are they eating? Because for the exact that they picked all this stuff, they should eat it. Plus, we want them to like have sustenance for the night because they've got a long night ahead of them. So yeah, we've got that built into our timeline to get those drink orders, get those appetizers in the back room, and check on their meals and make sure everything is okay. So yeah, I'm mama bear.
It's funny. I think of wedding planners, and even if you, let's say you don't have the budget for a wedding planner, I would say have at least a day of planner because things happen, and just to have that extra set of eyes of somebody who knows what's going on that can handle those situations. And
Yeah.
like you're saying, having appetizers while getting dressed, that's just that extra thing that the average person isn't going to think of.
Yeah, because all of us come with experience. We've done this over and over, weekend after weekend. Plus, we make a point of being on Facebook groups. We go to seminars. We go to Wedding MBA. We stay on top of these situations because, quite frankly, it's kind of interesting to listen to what other people have dealt with and the problems and how they solved it. And you're like, dang, I never thought of that. And so it's kind of like we don't necessarily have to experience it, but we know someone who's in our shoes who've experienced it. So we can learn from them and hopefully come to the table a little bit more prepared. I take my bridal kit just like every other wedding planner does. And I love when I find out something that someone else had in theirs that I don't have in mine. So like mine's so big now. I have everything you can think of, every kind of glue and tape you can think of, from eyelash glue to super glue to hot glue guns. But I love when I learn about something new to add to that kit so that we can come prepared to handle any situation. But I don't think I've gone through one wedding in 10 years that I have not learned something.
So true. That's why we demand the big money, because you're paying for that experience.
Absolutely. It's depth. Absolutely. Yeah. People are like, oh, well, you don't have to stay the whole time. It's like, oh, yes, I do. Because some of the weird stuff happens late at night as everybody's leaving. I want to make sure everybody gets on that shuttle, and that shuttle is your shuttle, and off you go. So yeah, it's super important. And I even say with my clients who are back and forth between going with what we call wedding management, we're trying to get away from that word day of, we're calling it wedding management, because we do get involved so much earlier than just that day. God forbid anybody tries to do it by getting involved only on that day. You'd be going into a firestorm. But the price of the difference between a full planning package and a wedding management package may be significant, but what we're doing with full planning is saving you money, really, because we're telling you what not to do. We're guiding you to the right people for your budget. We're not going to let you get seduced by beautiful photographs for a photographer you cannot afford, or that we know is just over the top and expensive. We know who the up and coming people are that probably do it for a little bit less, but they're talented. So let's go with them because their prices are a little lower. I do think that there's a value. I mean, I personally spent a lot of time developing relationships with vendors so that I can guide my clients to the right one. It's like matchmaking. I make sure I vet my clients and sit there and say, tell me about what colors you like. Tell me about what color photography. Do you like it dark and moody? Do you like it light and airy? Do you like it in between? Do you want it trendy? Do you want it more candid, more editorial? I really pick their brains a lot. And then I show them, I've got this great chart that I make that shows them what I'm talking about if they don't understand my verbiage. And I'm like, this is light and airy. It's very overexposed, very romantic, very fairy tale like. And if that's what they love, then that's the kind of photographer I'm going to guide them to. So the money I can save them for that kind of stuff, and even guiding them through their menu selection. You don't need 5 appetizers. Do a cheese board and 3 appetizers that are passed, saving you money. Don't go with this dessert, go with that dessert, saving you money. So I think sometimes we can actually pay for ourselves just by having the value.
That's a great transition. You already covered some of it. I was going to ask you what were some of the areas where you think you can help couples save money, or maybe areas that they tend to overspend that maybe they shouldn't spend as much on?
Well, I think we all know what I'm going to say. Favors are a total waste, unless if you're a really great baker or a really great cook or something, and you want to give everybody your own homemade jam. I can see that. But most of the time, the koozies, the foam sticks, the flip flops, the fans, that's another one, the fans, all that stuff. I sit there and I'm like, Oriental Trading must love when they get those orders like, oh, must be somebody's wedding this weekend. And then they show up at the wedding and I have to unwrap them all and sit there and curse China because I see all these stickers that say made in China. I have to unwrap them all, put them in a pretty basket, put them out. And at the end of the night, I collect them all and throw them in the trash. Total waste of money. Total waste of money. I always tell brides, we're trying to get you married and we're trying to give your family and friends a really beautiful night, great food, great music. Some of this stuff is just silly. It's just silly. And it is a waste of money. I think that is probably the obvious one. I think the other one is really who you invite. You're going to go over budget tremendously because you're inviting so many people that really are not as close to you as you think they are. If you don't think you're going to be talking to them a year from now or 6 months from now, or you haven't talked to them for 6 months, you can always just use the excuse like we're having an intimate wedding and invite the people that really matter and really are always going to be in your life. I think that's where a lot of people go overboard on spending is by inviting too many people.
And I think a trend lately has been having smaller ceremonies where you're just having, I don't know if you're seeing this in your area, where you're just having your immediate family and your immediate friends, maybe 10 people, and then everybody else gets invited to the reception. And still that's limited, but kind of the same philosophy. So that way you're not having to worry about all the logistics of from one location to another location.
Yeah. We've even seen a couple people that have gone to the courthouse and made the courthouse thing super cute and romantic. And they bring a photographer and they wear a cute little suit. And then they have the celebration party later in the week or whatever. So they just do that little with mom and dad and maybe your siblings or just by themselves. And they're kind of sexy in a way. Very Sex in the City.
Yes. So do you have any examples of food and beverage choices gone wrong at a reception?
Besides the moldy cake,
Yes.
we're seeing a lot in the world of weddings. We're seeing that trend of champagne towers. Everybody's saying it's over, it's done, we've done it enough. But I'm not seeing brides being done with it or couples being done with it. They're still really wanting the champagne tower. It's just that in the wedding industry, we're a little ahead of the curve. We see it when it's first coming out, and then we see it all ad nauseum in every magazine and every website. But they still really like it. But the champagne tends to be a total waste, complete waste of money. Nobody drinks it half the time. So one way to circumvent that is just don't even do a champagne tower. Just have a really nice thing is to have flutes of champagne that are only filled halfway, given to people right when they arrive at the ceremony. So they sit down for the ceremony with a glass of champagne. And that feels very special, very elegant, very celebratory. And it gives them something to do while they're sitting waiting for the ceremony to start. So if you're really set on having the champagne be part of it, that's a great thing to do. And then when you go to the cocktail hour, you already have a drink in your hand. So you don't have to go stand in that long line. You're ready. You're set to go. So that's been a bad thing turned into a good thing, with the champagne. Food wise, I really haven't seen there hasn't been too much new stuff happening with foods. I have not personally done a food truck wedding. I don't want to. I don't know how that logistically could work well, because why would you invite people to your wedding and make them stand in line for their dinner? And by the way, who's cleaning up the table at the end of the night?
Yeah, I've seen it more as an accent where I've seen cookie food trucks or ice cream at kind of like a snack instead of the actual meal.
Yeah, I think that's a win. The fun thing when you see we had an ice cream truck beeping its horn as it was pulling up to an outdoor wedding and ringing its bell, and everybody was like, "What is that little mint green truck ringing?" And it was cute. It was a great presentation, and everybody loved the ice cream. But when I see people that want I want like 2 or 3 food trucks and everybody can pick what they want, I'm like, okay, now you have to have an entire staff to do nothing but pick up all those plates and put them in the trash. And that means now you have trash cans. Do you really want trash cans like out and about at your wedding? So, it's one of those things that I'm like, oh, I can't wait till that's over so that we don't have to deal with food truck ideas. And then there's also a barbecue company that shall go unnamed that claims to be a full service catering company, and they're a national brand, and they are not. They are also like, here it is, they set it up and they walk away, and all the dishes are on the tables or plates, and it's just a hot mess. And I'm like, oh my God, I will never do that again. Never let them do that. I'm going to just disclosure right there. I did not book that catering company. I did not want them to do it. I came in as wedding management. They had already planned that, but I was like, never would I let a bride do that again, because it was just a mess, absolute mess. And I don't like to see a mess. So of course, me and my team will clean it up. But by the end of the night, the bride's mom came up to me and she's like, why are you cleaning tables? I'm like, because there is no one else. Your guests aren't putting them in the trash can, and I can't let this happen. I have to intervene and help.
So one of the biggest pet peeves, just to kind of wind things down from the DJ standpoint, I'm sure there's other vendors as well, is the layout of the reception room. Have you seen any bad layouts, or maybe offer any suggestions? Because a lot of DJs will get the layouts and the dance floors in one area, and then the DJ is in another area, not near the dance floor. So do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, I think that happens a lot with historical buildings when you're having it in a mansion where it's basically small rooms, and the venue will, because let's face it, that's the first place brides and grooms are going, is to the venue to book their venue. And the venue is telling them all the things that are possible, but they're really not looking at it from the perspective of a caterer, a photographer, or a DJ or a band. So they're like, of course you can put your music in here and you can eat in here and do cocktail hour in there. But as a planner, I've done enough of those kinds of events that I can tell you how that flow is going to go. And that's what looks like everything will fit in this room is not going to fit in that room. And your DJ is kind of part of the night. You kind of need him even there during dinner. You want to know where he is, what his voice is, because he's introducing your people that are doing toasts and your officiant that might be doing a prayer before dinner. So you want to make sure he's got access and is close to where the bulk of the people are if they're in a different room. Yes, they have a cordless mic, but they still need the sound system. I know one venue, just this summer, they sold my couple before my couple had booked me, and they went out and looked for venues by themselves before I could get to them. And they signed on the dotted line before I could stop them. And the venue sold them a space that was tight for 250 people. And that's what they were having, was 250 people. And they were like, but people are going to cancel. So yes, they could have fit 250 people, but they could not fit 250 people plus a 12-piece band, plus a huge dessert display, plus a live painter, plus a cake being set out by itself, plus a cigar roller, and plus an extra bar for the 250 people. So the venue just wanted the money. They wanted the booking. But day of, when bride and groom were introduced and had to walk through these tables that were so tight that their hips were bumping into the chairs, it was a nightmare. And then they all sat down. Now the mother of the groom, who was challenging, went up to the band during dinner and said, start playing music for dancing. Well, we didn't have that built into the night. We're like, no. You're supposed to be sitting down for dinner because your food's coming out. You need to be in your seat so your dinner can be placed in front of you. But she went and told the band, now all the food's coming out and people are crashing into each other. And the waiters and waitresses have big trays with 5 plates on them. And it was a mess. It was an absolute mess. And I finally had to intervene and ask the band to please stop and come upstairs and have dinner, because we need you guys to eat, put the recorded music on. Our groom's mom was furious. Shellie, I want to dance. I'm like, no. This isn't the time to dance. This is time to eat and visit with your friends at your table, and then we're going to dance. Well, then she took it upon herself to grab the photographer and start getting large groups on the dance floor to get pictures taken that were also not part of the timeline with the photographer or us. So now we have big groups on the floor trying to get photos while the staff is trying to serve people to eat. And you know what she said after the wedding? My food was cold. I was like, there's no winning. There's no winning with this one. But I did say to the venue, you really need to be careful about putting too many people in a room unless you know all the facts about who else is going to use that room, like the band. A 12-piece band is huge.
I think that's a really great point. That's something that hasn't come up on the podcast yet, is when you're planning the layouts, everything else. Even we were talking about photo booths in the past, and like you're saying, the cigar rolling is really popular. How many bars are you going to have in the room? I think that that's really important. It's more than just people. It's what's actually happening at your reception.
Yeah. because there's nothing worse than you don't want anybody dropping their plates or dropping their trays of glasses. And we could see it. We could see the staff getting very frustrated. And you don't want that because the guests see that.
Yeah.
The guests feel that energy, and it's just not a good look at all. Fortunately, the venue was pretty responsive, and they were like, yeah, we kind of feel like we oversold it too. I'm like, yeah, it's great that you want to make the money, but find another way. So that was a bummer. Now I'm going to supersede that kind of stuff and be like, no, we're just not doing it. We're not. And the couple did. They wanted a photo booth. And I said to them, we cannot do it. You cannot have a photo booth. There's no room. We're tight so as it is. But sometimes they don't know. We're trying to educate them. This is the first big party they've ever had. They could have been at 20 weddings, but they've never thrown one.
Right. I was going to say they've never been married before, most couples anyway.
Yeah.
To kind of wind things up, is there something we missed that you think that we should talk about?
I think we've really covered it. I think when you really look at all of this, so much of it is communication and talking and asking questions and making decisions. I often say to my couples, it's a lot. There's no getting around it. I break my planning process into 3 phases. So you get a break. After you give me all your information, take a deep breath. I'm going to go get you, because a lot of couples come to me with their venue already secured. And then they're like, uh-oh, this is going to be hard. We need a planner. But it's like, once you have your venue, let's just take a break, take a deep breath. I'm going to go design your wedding. Now that you've given me all the stuff, I'm going to pick your brain. We're just going to talk for a while. And then once you take a break, and then we're going to go get you your vendors. We're going to do all that, talk to them, pick our favorites, match you up, get it all done. And then we're going to take another break, so that it isn't overwhelming. And a lot of the communication that happens in those breaks helps us for the next phase. And I think it helps parents, it helps bridal party members also have a moment, because it's if you're planning it every single day for however months you're planning it, and you have no break, you're sick of your own wedding. And I never want my couples. I'm like, I want you to be bored. Once you give me the numbers of the RSVPs, I'm done with you. I'm done with you. You can just go have fun and talk to your friends about when they're coming into town and do your final fitting. But after that moment, it's all on us. We want them to be bored and have nothing to do, which is kind of a lie, because they're going to have stuff to do, but it's not going to have to do with the planning anymore. Yeah. They're still going to have to do their little stuff, wrap gifts for the bridesmaids and things like that.
Deal with family.
Yeah, deal with family, deal with cancellations, deal with people that suddenly can come now. And so I try to say, like, give me that number that I can get the caterer and the florist, and then float and have fun. Get back to your wife, spend some time together, go on a date with your fiance.
Yeah, that's a great tip. There's so much stress during that time. I think that's really important to spend some quality time together for sure. So Shellie, where can listeners connect with you and follow you?
Well, I'm on Instagram on Relevant Event Planning. That's the best way to find out what we do and what our stuff looks like, see what our personalities are like. We do have a bit of silliness going on, a little snarky thing going on. My website is currently down. Thank you very much for Google domains for messing my world up, but it is at just relevanteventplanning.com, and that's relevant with all E's. We are working really hard to get that website back up, but I'm waiting for Squarespace that's over in Australia to give me a call and let me know what to do. So I'm working on that, but it should be up in the next week.
Well, thanks, Shellie, for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. And offering your tips about bad weddings and to turn it around into making it a great wedding.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. Stay tuned for next week for another episode of the Wedding Songs Podcast, coming out every Thursday morning. Thanks for listening and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Wedding Songs Podcast. Never miss a future episode. Subscribe today to our podcast. Follow us on Facebook at My Wedding Songs and send us a message about playlists you would like covered.